Rick had always been a man of routine. As an experienced lumberjack, he had spent years working in forests, cutting trees, and understanding the land like the back of his hand. He knew how to tell the age of a tree just by looking at its bark, how to read the weather by the scent in the air, and how to spot signs of decay or disease before a tree even began to lean. But nothing in his years of experience had prepared him for what he was about to discover. That morning started like any other. The crew had arrived at the site early, checking their equipment and planning their tasks for the day. The forest was dense, the air crisp, and the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the distant calls of birds. As Rick walked along the marked trees, assessing which ones needed to be cut, his eyes fell on an enormous oak standing tall among the others. Something about it felt off. It wasn't just its size, though it was massive, likely well over 100 years old. It was the way the bark looked, covered in deep, unnatural cracks, as though the tree had been under stress for years. He stepped closer, running his hand over the rough surface, and immediately noticed something strange. One section of the trunk felt different, almost as if it were hollow underneath. That wasn't normal for a tree this large. Rick crouched down, pressing his ear to the bark, tapping lightly with his knuckles. The sound confirmed his suspicion. There was definitely an empty space inside. His curiosity got the best of him. He knew he had to investigate further. Grabbing his axe, he carefully began cutting away at the outer layer. He worked slowly, making sure not to damage whatever was inside. As his colleagues heard the unusual sound of wood splitting in a hollow area, they gathered around, watching as he peeled back the layers of bark. After several minutes, the opening widened, revealing something no one expected. Lodged deep within the heart of the tree was a metal box, rusted, sealed, and impossibly well preserved. The group fell silent, staring at the object in disbelief. How could a box be inside a tree that had been growing for over a century? Rick carefully pulled it out, wiping off the thick layers of hardened sap and debris that had fused it to the wood. The box had an old-fashioned lock, but time and moisture had weakened it enough for Rick to pry it open with a tool. As he lifted the lid, a musty smell escaped, mixed with the scent of aged paper and metal. Inside, he found a collection of old, faded documents, a stack of black and white photographs, and a pocket watch that had stopped ticking long ago. The papers were delicate, their edges crumbling at the slightest touch. But one thing was clear: the writing was old. The ink had faded, but the name, William Carter, was repeated multiple times across the letters. The dates on them ranged from 1910 to 1914. Rick and his crew exchanged puzzled looks. Who was William Carter, and how had his belongings ended up inside this tree? They carefully spread out the contents, trying to piece together the story. The photographs showed a young man in a military uniform, standing beside a woman and a small child. The letters were written in elegant cursive, some addressed to "My dearest Eleanor." One letter stood out. It was dated June 1914, just before the start of World War I. In it, William wrote about being called to serve, promising his wife that he would return soon, and that he was leaving something behind for her to find when he came home. The realization hit Rick hard. William must have hidden this box inside the young oak tree before he left for war, possibly intending to retrieve it later. But had he ever returned? The crew quickly reached out to local historians, hoping to find answers. A few days later, the truth came to light. Records showed that William Carter had indeed lived in the area over a century ago. He had been a young husband and father who had gone off to fight in World War I, but he had never returned. His name was listed among the soldiers missing in action. His wife and child had eventually moved away, leaving behind nothing but unanswered questions about what had happened to him. The box he had hidden had remained untouched, sealed away by time as the tree grew around it, turning it into an unintentional time capsule. The discovery made headlines in the local town. Historians examined the documents and photographs, and efforts were made to track down any living descendants of William Carter. Eventually, a distant relative was found. A great-granddaughter who had no idea about the existence of her ancestors' hidden letters. The box was carefully preserved, and its contents were given to William's surviving family members, who were deeply moved by the unexpected connection to their past. It was an emotional moment, a piece of history brought back to life by sheer chance. For Rick, the discovery was unlike anything he had ever experienced. He had set out that day expecting to cut trees, not uncover a century-old mystery. It was a powerful reminder of how nature sometimes holds on to secrets longer than we can imagine, preserving memories in ways we never expect. To this day, people still talk about the incredible find inside the ancient oak. And as for Rick, every time he walks through the forest now, he can't help but wonder how many other stories might still be hidden, waiting to be uncovered. What do you think about this incredible discovery? Could there be more hidden treasures inside the forests we pass by every day? Comment your thoughts below. And if you enjoy real-life discoveries like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Who knows what other mysteries are waiting to be uncovered?